Nearly 300 Venezuelans are in El Salvador tonight after being deported from the United States without a hearing under a rarely used 18th century law, and despite a federal judge's order blocking the move.
Earlier this weekend, some 250 Venezuelans, alleged members of the MS-13 and Tren de Aragua gangs, were sent back to El Salvador after a U.S. federal judge ordered to temporarily halt the removals and turn back any planes carrying the deportees.
The Trump administration has deported over 200 alleged members of a Venezuelan gang to a prison in El Salvador. The move comes despite a court order prohibiting such action. And in a highly controversial statement, the White House justified ignoring the order, saying federal courts have no jurisdiction over how a president conducts his foreign affairs.
On March 16, 2025, the United States deported more than 200 Venezuelans to El Salvador, despite a federal court ruling prohibiting such actions. The news spread rapidly across the internet, triggering a wave of outrage. According to reports by human rights advocates and journalists, the detainees were transported under harsh conditions. Their hands and feet were shackled, they were yelled at, and forced to walk bent over. Upon arrival in El Salvador, their heads and beards were forcibly shaved, further fueling public anger. A video released by the Salvadoran government showing humiliated, shackled men under armed guard went viral and raised questions about the humanity of these measures. From his first days in office, Donald Trump made the fight against immigration one of his top priorities. He repeatedly labeled migrants as invaders and terrorists, and accused the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua of invading the United States at the behest of Nicolas Maduro.
People in our country illegally can self-deport the easy way, or they can get deported the hard way, and that's not pleasant.
One of his most extravagant claims, that migrants were conducting an irregular war against America, became the pretext for invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1789. This law allows the detention and deportation of citizens of enemy countries without a court order if those countries are at war with the United States. It was applied during the War of 1812 with Great Britain and during both World Wars. In particular, it served as the legal basis for the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. The current administration's hardline immigration policy contrasts sharply with the personal background of Secretary of State Marco Rubio, whose Cuban heritage is a reminder that he himself is a descendant of immigrants.
Because my father was an immigrant, my mother was an immigrant, my grandparents were immigrants, my wife's family are all immigrants. All of my neighbors are either immigrants or first generation. I grew up in a community of immigrants and I still live in one. I understand this issue in every aspect of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Nevertheless, Rubio actively supports Trump's tough stance. It all began with Rubio's visit to El Salvador on February 3, 2025. There, he met with President Nayib Bukele, who has gained notoriety for his uncompromising war on crime. During negotiations, Bukele proposed a deal. El Salvador would accept deported migrants of any nationality, and even American citizens convicted of serious crimes, in exchange for an annual payment of $6 million. Rubio called it an innovative solution that would help America get rid of undesirable elements and reduce the burden on its own prisons. This agreement laid the groundwork for what followed. On March 15th, Trump signed an executive order citing the Alien Enemies Act, which permits deportation without court proceedings in wartime conditions. He declared Tren de Aragua a terrorist organization that threatens U.S. security. The next day, March 16th, two planes carrying individuals accused of belonging to the Tren de Aragua and MS-13 gangs departed for El Salvador. Federal Judge James Boasberg issued an emergency order to halt the deportation and return the planes, but the administration ignored the ruling. Bukele reacted ironically on social media. Those deported were sent to the Counter-Terrorism Confinement Center, CECOT, in Tecopal. the largest prison in Latin America, opened by Bukele in 2023. The complex, with capacity for 40,000 people, boasts high-tech equipment, surveillance cameras, biometric scanners, and isolated blocks. Yet behind the glitter of technology lies a grim reality: overcrowded cells where inmates sleep on bare metal bunks, and a lack of food, water, and medical care. Human rights organizations report torture, beatings, and fatalities. For the Venezuelans deported without solid evidence of crimes, life in CECOT is a living hell. The Trump-Rubio-Bukele deal has far-reaching consequences. If El Salvador begins accepting American criminals, Trump gains a tool to crack down on dissidents. Although deportation of U.S. citizens is legally prohibited, the administration has already shown a willingness to ignore court orders. Imagine activists, journalists, or political opponents being accused of terrorism and sent to Salvadoran prisons. This is not only a threat to freedom in America, but also a risk of destabilizing Central America by strengthening criminal networks. For migrants, it means losing any hope of protection or justice. The deportation of Venezuelans to El Salvador is more than just another scandal. It demonstrates how Trump, relying on the authoritarian Bukele, is turning the migration crisis into a showcase of power. CECOT, despite its technology, has become a symbol of repression rather than justice. The international community must respond because remaining silent may open the door to further human rights violations.